Hello everyone, it's Hannah here from Virtually Fluent. Today we are going to talk about one of the most complex grammar topics and most commonly misused or mistaken grammar topics in English, which is verb formation. Now you can practice this using our verb formation course. I've left the link to this course in the description below. You can also find lots of other free materials across our social media channels. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest. I've left all those links in the description below. Go ahead and follow us for lots of materials and tools to help you learn English. For now, let's get started with verb formation in English. So verb formation is normally essential. We need to know those rules for when we have two verbs next to each other. Not always. This is not the only situation we need verb formation, but generally that's why we learn the rules. Now, the first verb in any sentence is always going to be conjugated. It could be in any tense, but it must be conjugated to the subject of our sentence. If we have another verb after this, it follows different rules. It follows the verb formation rules, and that's what we're going to learn today. So take a look at this example sentence. They continued working together. They continued, that's conjugated correctly in the past simple tense, but now we say working. Here we have an ing at the end of the word. We're using the gerund form. Why on earth is that? Let's take a look at the rules. So when we talk about verb formation, we have three different patterns. We have the bare infinitive, we have the to plus infinitive, and we have the gerund, which is the ing ending. That's just what we've seen in our example sentence. And each verb uses one of these structures depending on other things that are inside the sentence or some rules that we just need to learn. Let's have a look at why we would use the bare infinitive. So this is mostly used when we have a modal verb in the sentence. All modal verbs will be followed immediately by a bare infinitive verb. For example, I can speak 4 languages. We should do yoga. It's very good for you. Speak and do, both in the bare infinitive form. There are some other verbs, more complicated verbs, that are also followed by the infinitive. We will talk about these in a later video because these are a little bit more complicated than basic modal verbs in English. Now, the second verb formation pattern we have is to plus infinitive. Now, this is most importantly used when there is an adjective in the sentence. For example, I'd be very happy to help. Not help, but to help. To plus infinitive. That's because we have an adjective immediately before, which is happy. We have our verb, I'd be, that's our conjugated verb. Very happy, adjective. To plus infinitive, to help. I'd be very happy to help. We are sorry to see you leave. Now we also use the to plus infinitive if there is an object that is following the main verb. For example, I asked you to help me. This will normally be an object pronoun. Me, you, him, her, it, us, them. It could also be a name. I asked Hannah to help me. So make sure you understand who is receiving the action. That's going to be your object. And that means we need to plus infinitive. Another example might be I expected him to arrive earlier. So those are the general rules for using to plus infinitive, but sadly we also have just a really long list of certain verbs that must be followed by to plus infinitive. You simply need to sit and learn these verbs. We do have a list of the most common verbs for using the correct verb formation in English. We have this list in the course, the verb formation course on our website. As I said, I've left the link in the description below. So for example, the verb to want is always followed by to plus infinitive. He wants to cook dinner. They want to buy some chocolates. Another verb that is always followed by to plus infinitive is need. She needs to do her homework now. I needed to go to the dentist. Remember, it doesn't matter what tense that first verb is in, it will always be followed by to plus infinitive, need and want. Now, the final verb formation rule is the gerund, which is that ing ending. Technically, this is the same spelling and the same rules as the present participle, but it just has a slightly different name because it's used in a different way. Now, if we have a preposition after our first verb, then we must use the gerund form. For example, I plan on going to the shops this afternoon. Plan on. On is our preposition, so that next verb must be a gerund. Another example might be, we will think about having a party for your birthday. Now, we also use the gerund form if this action, this verb, becomes the subject of the sentence. What we're doing is we're converting a verb into a noun form. Now, this is one of these exceptions because remember I explained at the beginning it's if we have two verbs next to each other. This is one of those different exceptions. There's no other verb here. But if we convert that verb into the subject, it must be gerund. For example, cycling is fun. Or speaking English is hard. And similar to the to plus infinitive, there's a long list of verbs that also use the gerund. We just need to learn these verbs. This list is also available in our verb formation course. For example, I enjoy watching films. Enjoy is always followed by gerund. I enjoy going to the cinema. The verb to practice is also followed by gerund. I will practice playing the piano tomorrow. I practiced reading in English yesterday. So those are the general rules for when we use these three types of verb formation. Remember, it's mostly when there are two verbs in the sentence. Please be sure you apply this verb formation rule to the second verb, not the first verb. So as I explained, we do have a list of verbs that always use to plus infinitive, and another list of verbs that always use gerund, but we also have some flexible verbs in English that can use either to plus infinitive or gerund. Obviously, those other rules, prepositions and subjects and adjectives are more important. But for example, begin and continue, both of these could be used in either way. For example, I began to cook dinner or I began cooking dinner, and there's no difference in meaning. However, there is a very small group of verbs that can also be used in to plus infinitive and in gerund. However, the meaning totally changes in both of these situations. We're not going to talk about that today. That's slightly more advanced and I'll do another video on that later. Now, when we have more than one verb in a sentence, we really need to understand exactly the function that each verb plays in the sentence. And this is particularly important if we want to convert the sentence into the negative, because we need to understand, is it the first verb that is becoming negative or is it the second verb that is becoming negative? Mostly, there's very tiny difference between these, but there are some situations we'll look at now where the meaning can completely change depending on which verb is negative. Now, if we're following the basic infinitive structure, the not or that negative part will always be placed immediately after that first verb. I cannot speak 4 languages. Of course, we can contract this to I can't speak 4 languages. Should not, must not, shouldn't, mustn't. And you will learn this negative form when you learn the modal verbs. Now, if we move to the second verb formation, which is to plus infinitive, we looked at this example, I expected him to arrive earlier. Now, if you have no expectation, we would convert that first verb into the negative part. I didn't expect him to arrive later. The second verb doesn't change. We follow the same formation. But we might want to make that second verb negative instead, in which case we would say, I expected him not to arrive earlier. And this is an example where the meaning slightly changes between the two sentences. If we say, I didn't expect him to arrive earlier, you had absolutely no expectation. No, I didn't expect it. If we say, I expected him not to arrive earlier, you have an expectation. Yes, I expect something. What do you expect? that he will not arrive early. So there's a tiny difference in meaning, but make sure you really understand your sentence, which part you want to make negative. If we make the first verb negative, it will follow the tense rules. If we make the second verb negative, we just insert not before that second verb. We don't use anything else, no tense rules, just not plus to plus infinitive. And this is actually exactly the same for the gerund verb formation. For example, they continued working together. We could convert the first verb into the negative, they didn't continue working together. Or we could make the second verb negative, they continued not working together. The gerund is the same as to plus infinitive. If we want to make the first verb negative, it's according to the tense rules. If we want to make the second verb negative, no tense rules, we insert not before the gerund verb. But again, there's a difference in meaning with these two sentences. They didn't continue working together means they work together, they've got a good relationship, and then they stop working. Nope, no more working. If we use the sentence they continued not working together, it means they have never worked together. In the past, nope, no work, and this is going to continue, no work in the future. So we need to be really careful when we're converting our sentences into negative with two verbs. Check that you understand which verb you want to be negative. So this is a really complex grammar topic in English. You can practice this in our basic verb formation course. I've left the link in the description below, but it's definitely something to watch out for. Don't forget to follow us across all of our social media accounts. The links are all in the descriptions below. If you learned something new, go ahead and give today's video a like, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel to learn lots more things about English grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, British culture, lots of different topics. This is Hannah at Virtually Fluent, bringing English to life.